This is NDTV. And you're watching NDTV 24/7.
At 42, he's the president global sales for the $30 billion internet giant Google, a company that has seen unparalleled growth over the last decade and has become synonymous with the internet, or shall we say at least internet search. Hello and welcome our special guest today, Nikesh Aroa, someone who's almost become the representative of the next generation of global Indians. Nikesh, thanks so much for being with us here on NDTV.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Nikesh, you just tweeted saying that you've landed in Delhi to Obama mania, and it's no surprise that President Obama's visit has been the most searched item on Google India.
You know what's fascinating is I love this country. I land the guy who welcomes me at the airport to the guy who drives me to the hotel. They all know Obama is in town. They all have their own personal stories about Obama. It's phenomenal.
Right, but let's talk a little about President Obama's agenda here and the fact that he made it clear right from the beginning that he's here really to create jobs for the people of America, especially given what's really happened in the midterm elections.
I think it's important to look at the bigger signaling event that is happening as a consequence of the American president arriving here, which is he's come with the largest entourage that any president has come with.
Right.
He's come with a lot of business leaders. He's signaling that India is relevant in the global landscape. We are a country which has to be paid attention to. We are a country where people want to be partners with us because we're one of the largest democracies in the world. I think that's a phenomenal signal for the country, and that's the light we should see his visit in.
Let's talk about the sticky outsourcing issue that has also been discussed many times, especially during President Obama's visit. As someone who is really at a top position in a technology firm, does it not bother you that it's taking us so much time and effort to really explain to American policymakers what outsourcing is all about?
I think as the world becomes more and more global, the context and concept of outsourcing is obsolete. We work in a company where we have offices in 40 countries. We have less people in California at Google than we have outside of California. So I'm not quite sure if people like us are outsourcing jobs to India, or the rest of the world is outsourced running the company to serve a few thousand people in California. So in that context, I think outsourcing is an obsolete concept. I think there has been tremendous amount of excellence shown by people in India in their ability to take tasks which have been poorly done from a process perspective and being able to improve. So I see it more as a center of excellence and our ability to prove that we can do some things more efficient and better, and therefore people should send it to where it can be done best.
Nikesh, let's change gears and talk about Google India and how important is India for Google right now?
Look, as one of the most populous countries in the world, as one of the most technology savvy countries in the world, it is clearly important. It is sort of not showing the momentum one would have liked to see in our ability to expand on the technology spectrum, whether it relates to broadband or whether it relates to development of technology. But I don't think it's a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
And why do you think it's not happening? What, according to you, are the reasons why you feel you're not satisfied with the kind of growth that you'd like to see?
I'm by nature somebody who doesn't get satisfied easily. So, whatever we do, it's not going to satisfy me that quickly. But I think the challenge we have is the infrastructure challenge that the country faces. And being a large democracy, we want to make sure we get many opinions on various matters, which does slow down our ability to move fast on infrastructure. And I think the thing that's holding us back, and we could grow even faster than what we're already targeted to grow, is our ability to scale our infrastructure in lockstep with the needs of the country.
Let's talk about the controversies now with regard to Google India and the entire issue of Google Maps, the border disputes, and the fact that Google in its maps around the world and anywhere except India is actually showing Arunachal Pradesh as not a part of India.
Let's be fair. Let's understand what's going on, right? If you look at a map while you're in India, you will see what the Indian government validates as the map of India.
But you're going to see a different map on another side.
Yeah, but let's be fair. We're not in the business of picking sides, right? We're an unbiased company which works on a global basis, and we can't pick sides in political disputes or disputes of any kind. So when you're in India, we will represent from our Indian business the map that India feels is accurate. When we're in China, we have to represent the map they feel accurate. And when we're outside of those two countries, we represent what the United Nations feel is appropriate, where they mark certain territories as disputed territories. And that's not just specific to the Indian issue. That there are many countries in the world where this issue comes up, and that's the position we have to take.
Okay, let me ask you this question. As an Indian, does it not bother you that there are certain areas which are a part of India and not shown as part of India?
When I'm in India and I look at the map from Google India, I see it as part of India.
But when you're sitting in California in your office,
it shows me as disputed territory. It actually shows me that the map that part of that territory is disputed, and that's what the United Nations recognizes.
So which of the three maps will you tell your daughter to believe?
My daughter is a smart kid. She'll understand there's a dispute, and she'll look at all three and understand what's going on.
All right. So just to get this right, Google's stated position remains that you are going to see different maps when there is a dispute in different countries, and that will not change.
Well, let me ask you the question, right? You sit in this position of judging people, you sit in the position of media. If you were faced with the same problem, what would you do? Our position is very simple. We don't take sides. We're a global company. We operate in over 100 countries around the world. We can't afford to take sides.
The Indian government has raised objection. Have you engaged with the Indian government to really explain your position? Because the Indian government has an issue with something like this.
Yes, of course. We have had multiple conversations with not just the Indian government, governments around the world which see issue with this kind of depiction.
And what if the Indian government decides to take action against Google for
That's a conversation between the Indian government and Google.
And it has happened, if I'm right.
We have conversations with governments all the time.
All right. But the real policy then is keep everybody happy.
The real policy is make sure you respect differences of opinion and make sure that you do what's right in the context of the overall picture you're trying to portray.
Okay, I'm not convinced on that one, but I'm going to let it pass. And
That's all right. There's always two perspectives to things, right? Yours and mine.
Right. Nikesh, let's also talk about the products that we're going to see being rolled out in the Indian market in the next couple of months. We've seen the music search has been one of your latest offerings here. What next do we have for the Indian market from Google?
I think it's fair to believe that we are going to launch most of our products that we launch on a global basis. They will make their way to India. I think I have a lot of respect for the fact that we are a democracy and we operate and we respect various opinions around the place. So I think from that perspective, we've never had issue with offering our services in this market. We believe this is one of the markets where we're most comfortable operating within the rules of the government. So no issue there.
Right, and let's talk a little more about the entire censorship issue in China.
I think what is important to understand is we're a company which prides ourselves in sort of holding a very high position in terms of the way we operate in various parts of the world. And we went into China with our eyes open. We said we're going to go into this market. We're hoping that a 1% attempt to block certain things is not. We don't want to not provide 99% of the information to the citizens of that country because there's an attempt to block 1% of that information.
So you were okay with it initially?
We went in hoping that stance was going to, over time, allow us to offer more and more services,
but the
more and more
happened?
searches. Well, nothing changed, and it's been 5 years, and we decided that wasn't working for us, and we decided we'd always said we would review the situation on a frequent basis to see if things were going to change. So we decided that that was not something that was acceptable, and we decided we were going to operate outside of China. So we offer our Chinese search from Hong Kong.
Hong Kong, right. But why did it take you 5 years to make that decision?
There's no right time. If I had done it in 3 years, you'd ask me the same question. If I'd done it after a year, you'd ask me the same question. So 5 years just happens to be the time which we sort of looked around, waited to see how that was progressing, and then we realized it wasn't going to change, so we decided to move our search outside the market.
Have you given up, or are you still engaging with the Chinese government?
I don't think it's fair to say we've given up, right? I mean, we are providing services. We have Chinese users who access our services. We have people in China who work in China. We provide other services which are not censored in China. So it's not like we have given up on China. All we've done is we've decided that their stance on a particular product is not acceptable to us, and we can choose to not do business in that context, which I think is the right of any company in any country. At the same time, we have been applauded by many of our users for continuing to keep our moral stance on the topic. So it's great on certain aspects, and it's something we're going to have to wait and see as it relates to business in China in the future.
Welcome back. We're in conversation with Nikesh Aroa, the President Global Sales of Google. Nikesh, let's talk competition now and what's really happening in the technology world. Facebook and the recent move of Google to actually go ahead and block the access that Facebook has to go ahead and make friends using Gmail. The reason you decided to do that now?
Look, we've always, one of the things which is interesting is we've always held a position that we don't want to encumber users in any way. So that's why today, you get billions of searches done without us asking you to register anywhere, us asking you to tell us anything about yourself. You go to Google, you do a search, and we want you to get away from our homepage as quickly as possible. Probably one of the only few internet businesses in the world which actually wants you to go away. Every other internet business says, please come and stay. So
right.
We've held that position. We want users to be unencumbered. And in that context, we have a very simple philosophy that if you ever entrust us with any of your data, we want you to be able to take it away with you. In that context, we realized that there were players in the market who were not doing the same thing.
But it took you a long time to realize that.
Again, we're back to this timing issue, right? At the end of the day,
why as of last week you woke up to this?
We woke up to this because we felt that it was time that we stopped this because it's not in the interest of the user, and we wanted to make sure there was reciprocity in this context, right?
But many would believe that this is an indication of the growing tension, the underlying tension between Facebook and Google.
I think the many who believe that is wrong, because you have to understand there are 2 billion people connected to the internet. The internet is now a reflection of society, it's a reflection of the way business exists. And in today's business, there are many players who are successful. The internet is not a zero-sum game. It's not like when Facebook wins, Google loses, or Google wins, Facebook loses. It is, there are many players who are going to be successful. They're all going to survive and cohabitate and be very successful and continue to build an ecosystem which supports each other. That's what's going to happen.
But Google coming up with its own social networking site, talks of Google Me launching very soon?
We never pre-announce products, so let's wait and see what happens.
But it's almost certain now that Google Me is coming. Is that right?
If you say so.
All right, so we've got you confirming that Google Me is coming, but are you going to be big in the social networking space?
I don't know. We can't presuppose success of any product in the marketplace, but it's only fair you'd expect us to be in the internet space. At least you'd want us to try various products out there. So, clearly, any attempt that we make should be an attempt to provide a better user experience. If it's not a better user experience, we're not in the business of wanting to be Me Too, so no pun intended. So we'll see what happens.
All right, the internet business, and that's something that's almost become synonymous with Google. Tell us a little more about the trends that you're seeing that are shaping up, and trends that are likely to really determine the way technology firms, internet firms are going to be driven over the next couple of years.
You're seeing consumer behavior is beginning to change. And companies and businesses which took years to establish are now getting established in 1 year, or 2 years, or 5 years. I mean, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Groupon, Zynga, all these are phenomena of the internet era which have all been created in 1 to 5 years. I can't think of any global brand that was created in 5 years before the internet came about. I think there's lots and lots of technology that is going to happen in the future. I think we're still at the beginning of this curve.
Which are the areas that Google's really focusing on? Are we going to see Google focusing on its core search business or diversifying into other areas?
I think the way to think about Google, we're a company which likes to solve large-scale technology problems of scale.
Right.
We get excited about seeing an inefficiency, seeing if we can apply tremendous amounts of technology and solve that. That's what we get excited about. On the other side, we're trying to continue working on the advertising side and reshape that industry so that can provide us the dollars to be able to go fund the consumer innovation.
And many of your dollars also going towards some offbeat ideas and projects, self-driving cars, is that right?
Isn't that great?
It is great. It is great.
Just
but tell us a little more about it.
Just think about it. Like, if you think about traffic, I just drove around your city and it was phenomenal how long it took me to get from one place to the other. Do you realize that 20 to 30%, there's still 20-30% space between cars when they're driven by humans, and you can reduce that to 2% if you have a computer driving it, because a computer's response time is 10 times faster than humans. Just imagine the ramifications of a car that could drive itself. Now, I don't know if it's going to happen in my lifetime or your lifetime.
That was my next question. When are we going to see those self-driving cars?
I don't know, but
and considering that Google's betting its money on it.
Oh, we're not betting our money. Don't underestimate. We want lots and lots of interesting projects to happen, because the one thing which is important in our culture as a company is we want people to experiment. If we don't allow people to experiment, we're never going to have innovation. And it's okay for some experiments to fail. It's okay for some experiments to be off the wall.
Right.
Otherwise, we wouldn't have designed Android. We wouldn't have designed Chrome. We wouldn't have designed Google Maps. We wouldn't have designed Gmail. All these things came because some guy had a wacky idea. He was 26 years old and he decided he wants to challenge tradition. So you have to allow people to challenge tradition in whichever way they want to. Otherwise, if you try and constrain innovation, if you try and constrain experimentation, you get bad results. So you know what? Guy wants to design driverless cars? Go for it. Maybe it's driverless or pilotless airplanes next. I don't know.
Right. But what I really need to ask is that, is this just an idea, or is this something that Google is actually serious about?
This is a subset of engineers who have actually used very interesting technology to try and drive cars around without drivers. They're having a great time. They've been able to prove that actually works. They've actually competed with people like me, and the car's driven better than me.
So you've seen that technology, and it is working.
I've sat in a car, which I didn't have to touch the steering wheel.
Great, let's talk about competition yet again. Apple, Microsoft especially, seen as the undisputed leader in the technology world. Today we're talking about Apple and Microsoft teaming up to take on Google.
Since the time I've gone to Google, the two things which our founders have sort of always said, and I've always enjoyed believing, is one is, don't get fixated on any one player in the industry, because if you do that, you run the risk of not innovating for the user. And I think that could be the biggest folly of any technology company in the world. And the second thing is, if you remember the roots of Google, right? This was two guys in a garage 11 years ago who decided to start a company and do search.
Right.
Now, could you have predicted 11 years ago that, in your words, the competition for some of the great technology companies of today would come from those two guys in the garage?
Right.
So, my point of view is that I'm sure there's competition working really hard and fast that is going to come outwit us 5, 6, 7 years, or they may be 3, 4 years away. But most likely it is going to be some other two guys in the garage who are working hard. It's something totally unique, which you and I have no idea about, and that's the one who's going to come blindsided. It's not going to be the obvious big guys out there, because if they were, they should have innovated in the space we're in.
Let's talk again, Nikesh, about the whole privacy issue, the fact that it is something that's going to come up time and again whenever we talk about more and more innovation in technology, more and more adaptation of technology. How do you really resolve the whole privacy challenge?
I think privacy is going to be one of our challenges or opportunities in the 21st century, to be honest. We've always had to strike this balance between convenience and sharing more about ourselves, whether it is in the context of our credit card information. When you and I use credit cards, we share a lot of information. Probably the credit card company has the ability to tell you when you got married, when you had a child, when you were sick. And I think, so in that context, one, the balance between convenience and what you want to share is important. And I think in that context, we as Google have tried to operate with all amounts of honesty and trust, where we try and make sure that people's data is not abused.
But you've still run into trouble, especially with products like Street View.
Yeah, we have run into trouble because, when you're trying to innovate at a rapid pace, you are bound to make mistakes. And once you make a mistake, and we felt it was important, the moment we discovered that we've made a mistake, we made a public apology and decided to share with the world what is going on and offer to delete the data, which is what we've done. And
so you do admit that you made a mistake?
We made a mistake on Street View. We have publicly acknowledged that. We've actually had conversations with many governments, and a lot of them have appreciated the honesty and basically, let us off with a warning saying, be careful when you do these things next time. Having said that, there's, every time you operate in the digital world, you and I as consumers are going to leave digital footprints. And that is something we have to be comfortable with as consumers, or we have to choose not to use those services. Sort of like, if you don't want your credit card company to know, you only have one choice: don't use a credit card.
But what happens when you acquire data without the knowledge of the consumer? And that's what's happened on several occasions.
I think there are lots and lots of players out there in the internet space, and not everybody lives up to the same standards. I think it's important that people live up to a moral code where they are holding that data on behalf of the customer, as I said, with tremendous amounts of trust.
But do you somewhere feel that you've let down your customers by actually going ahead and acquiring data when, for example, in the case of the photographs being taken of your homes, or data over unsecured Wi-Fi connections?
We just announced our product in Germany. I think Germany is one of those markets where we had the maximum number of conversations, and we allowed the users to opt out. They've chose to blur their houses if they choose that they don't want their houses there, which is perfectly fine. We had some 2% of the people in that country chose to blur their houses, and we have done that on their behalf. That's just perfectly fine. They're allowed to opt out of that service, and they have. And we've actually gone ahead and taken every one of those down. So, no, I think we have been very transparent about this.
Let's move on now and talk about your journey. The fact that today, as Indians, we feel very proud to see you in the position that you're in. Tell us a little more about how you really reached there, and what is your message for a lot of people who are looking up to you?
I don't see it as something that I've done consciously. I think what one does as an individual is you try and make sure that you're excited about what you do. And anytime I haven't felt really excited, like every time I haven't felt like I wake up in the morning and I want to go give it my 100%, I've decided to change. So, as you probably noticed, I've changed my job 4 or 5 times, and every time it's been because I've been bored, or I've decided to move on and do something more exciting.
Nikesh, you obviously love your job and you're very happy at Google right now, but there are some reports also suggesting that you could be considered as one of the people who could possibly, I know you've already, you know what I'm going to ask you.
Yes, of course.
Succeed Ratan Tata, and one of the people who could be a possible successor. If that role is offered to you, would you take it up?
That's very flattering. Ratan Tata is an icon in the country. I think what he's done for the country and what the Tata Group does is phenomenal. But I love what I do.
Here's wishing you all the luck in Google, and thanks so much for sparing so much time to talk to NDTV.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Thank you.